We're here at the Bayside Hills Civic Associations Memorial for 9/11, where we were just at its annual 9/11 ceremony. And we were packing up, and most of the people have gone. You might have seen the live video. And we just met a gentleman, Mell, who showed up and came and was starting to do something here. And Mell, it's a pleasure meeting you.
Pleasure meeting you.
Pleasure meeting you.
Pleasure meeting you.
And Mell, if you don't mind, this is so touching. Tell people what you were doing.
Okay. This is a picture of my grandpuppy who died in 2015, just after 9/11. And this was taken several years before. We used to come and bring him here every year, and this picture was taken. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you can see it, but he's in front of the flags and the candles and whatever. So after he passed away, I take this picture every year and I put it out here with candles for him and flags for him, just to kind of keep 9/11 and him and his connection to it alive. I was in Manhattan on 9/11.
Tell them about your exit.
Okay.
This is quite a story.
The shirt that I'm wearing, I got on September 12th, 2001. I wear it once a year on 9/11. And on 9/11, I had kind of a harrowing experience in leaving the island. I was working up at Park and 26th. I had been at the Trade Center 2 days before, still have my ID badge. And my daughter was working up in Times Square for a woman whose husband was a New York Police Harbor Patrolman. She said her husband was going to take them to their home in Breezy, and would my daughter care to go? And she said, I'm not going to leave without my father. So my daughter asked me, could I make it to the Intrepid? So I did. I walked over to 6th Avenue. I hitched a ride with two guys who had just left the Trade Center moments before it collapsed. I got off at 42nd Street and walked over to the Intrepid. And as I saw the boat pull up to the pier where the Intrepid was, we went to approach the pier. And of course, the guards by that time were guarding the entrance. They approached us with automatic weapons and made us show our ID. And then we finally got down onto the boat. So we get on this boat, which is a private boat. It doesn't have any NYPD insignia. And we're tooling down the middle of the Hudson. So of course the Coast Guard from one side and the NYPD from the other side make us heave to. He shows ID. We go out under the Verrazano and out to Breezy Point where they live, and I spent the rest of the afternoon watching all of the debris fall from the Trade Center.
For those who wouldn't know this, where Breezy Point is, along that part of the island, the view of downtown Manhattan is completely unobstructed. It's all kind of wetlands. So from Breezy Point, looking at Manhattan, you're seeing that smoke. I mean, you were in the middle of it when it was happening and got out of there.
Well,
and then went to Breezy and watched it from there.
Actually, I was on my way to work that morning, and I was on an express bus on the Long Island Expressway, and you could see off to the left the World Trade Center. And just about that time, we see some smoke coming from one of the towers. So somebody said, well, it must be a small plane or something, or somebody must have crashed. And we said, don't. And finally, the bus couldn't go anywhere, so we stopped at the subway station in Woodside. He said, I'm going back to the garage. Anybody wants to get out can. So I got on the train, and I went to the office, by which time everything was up on the screen, and actually saw everything happen on the screen as it was happening. And after that is when I got the call from my daughter.
Wow.
So it was, and to gild the lily here, my son was working across West Street. I think it was American Express, I don't recall. And they heard the commotion. He starts to get up to leave, and there's something over his PA system. Says, no, everybody go back to the desk. And he looks out, he says, I'm not going to do that. And he goes out, and as he's leaving, he sees people jumping from the towers. He was fortunate enough to catch a cab to go up to 2nd Avenue. But it was a traumatic day for all of us.
Cabs, we're still picking people up when they were jumping out of the building.
Yep.
He saw that. That's on 60 Minutes. I used to work for 60 Minutes.
Okay.
And on 60 Minutes, they just did the 9/11 story, and then also in some of the things we saw this morning. And when you look, and it brings you back to those horrific moments of what it really was like. How awful. And we're seeing that, and it's great that we don't forget, and not that we just don't forget the incident, that we don't forget the heroes, that so many of them died trying to save other people. But you guys, you and your family were right in the middle of all of that.
I was fortunate. I wasn't at the Trade Center at that time, although my son was, as I said, across the street. But there were some things in life you just never forget. I remember, if I can wax a little more, I'm 81 years old. I remember the day that President Kennedy was shot. And I was in my office at school, and I came out and I was in my ROTC uniform, and somebody said, "The president's been shot." And I said, "That's a lousy joke, not funny." So I got in my car, I went to my office. I had an office at school, believe that. And my office was next to the student newspaper office, and I went inside and I watched the feed coming over the teletype. And I wish, in retrospect, I had
dates us all right. The teletype.
telex,
Yeah.
teletype,
Yeah.
and I wish, in retrospect, I had thought to grab some off the feed, which I didn't. But
Yeah.
you never forget where you were and what you were doing and what you were wearing, and these are things you just don't forget.
I was speaking earlier to Rabbi Yaffe, and we were talking about the things that, for us baby boomers, when we were real small, it's like the question was always, do you remember where you were when Kennedy was shot? And you do. And now it's, do you remember where you were when Kennedy, but when happened with 9/11 and where we were?
There were people who predicted that this would happen. Several years after this, I went to work for Morgan Stanley.
Yeah.
And their head of security was a man called Rick Riscola, whose name I'm sure you have seen if you saw all the stories. And he saw the Trade Center bombing in '93. And he said, "We're going to be prepared." And he was fanatic.
The one we were hidden in the garage?
Yep. That was in '93.
Yeah.
And he became fanatic about making sure that they drilled and drilled and drilled. He'd go in and he'd say, "You got to leave." And some of these executives, "Well, I'm on here. You got to leave." And sure enough, and he said, "Because this will happen again." And on 9/11, Morgan Stanley had several floors in the building, and because of his diligence, everybody except 5 or 6 people got out. And Rick himself lost his life going back to get the last few people.
Oh.
But he said this will happen
The
again.
guy who was saving everybody else's life
Yep.
wound up giving his own.
Just, you can't make this stuff up.
Yeah.
You can't. Well, thank you for...
This is a pleasure meeting you.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
And especially, so we were leaving. Everybody's gone. And I just turned around and I see this gentleman coming over. I'm like, what's that guy doing? And it's him, and he's doing this wonderful thing in commemoration of his dog on 9/11.
Now I'm going to put Brinks' picture over here. I'm going to light 2 candles for him.
Brinks?
Brinks, like the money truck.
Yeah.
Because that's what it used to cost to keep him. But he was almost 16 when he passed away.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
You had to have a Brinks truck to pay for the dog.
that's for sure.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to put this up there. I made a little awning so that the rain doesn't drown the candles. Put some flags up. And this.
So Mel, one more question before you
Go ahead.
So about our attire, you're wearing a 9/11 shirt, but the hat, Vietnam War, your
Vietnam era. I was extremely fortunate. I was stationed here in Long Island City. I was a postal officer. We handled all the mail for all the APOs in Europe. And I had men stationed at Kennedy and at the Coastal Concentration Center on what was then 48th and Northern Boulevard. And the day after I got my discharge notice, the other half of my unit got notice to go to Nam. So I missed going to Nam by 1 day.
Wow. Well, thank you. We
Again.
have Mel to talk to now. So,
Again.
Listen, real pleasure.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to let you get back to what you were
I
doing.
gotta see if I can get this.
So I don't care what race, what color, what creed, what religion, what nationality, what sexual identity you prefer to be identified with. I don't care. Getting to know the people in our community makes you love our community. It's one of the most diversified in the world. there's more different religions, more different languages spoken, but more different ethnic origins and points of view represented in this community. And it's one of the reasons I love Bayside in Northeast Queens, but it's also things like running into Mell and seeing what he was doing for his dog. So I'm glad that I was able to do this and bring it to you. It's getting to know the people in your community and recognizing we are all one. That's the beauty that brings us and keeps us all together and will keep us moving forward into the future. Thanks for joining us, 9/11. Thank you to all of those heroes that helped save other people, and never forget what the human, and that's the reason, never forget, because it's the human spirit and the spirit of kindness and generosity and helping one another in the midst of terrible tragedy from evil people. That's the beauty of America. It's the beauty of our community, and that's something we all want to hold on to and cherish. Thanks for joining us. Bayside Live TV, I'm Gregg Sullivan.